We got up before dawn just to bring you
Top of the morning from beautiful downtown Baltimore.
Hi to Top of the Morning.
Top of the morning to all of you.
Top of the morning.
Welcome to Top of the Morning. I'm James Brumfield, and I'm being joined by Jerry Gietka. Is that right?
That's correct.
Great. And you're directing a show in Essex, is that right?
In Essex.
In Essex.
Cockpit and Court Summer Theater.
Cockpit and Court. That's the name of the theater.
That's the name of the theater group.
And what's the name of the production?
The production is Dial M for Murder, which everyone is familiar with as the old Hitchcock film classic.
I know it was turned into a book as well, wasn't it?
I'm not familiar with that, to be
Well,
honest with you.
it was turned into a book on tape anyway.
That could be.
I think it was the play.
That could be.
That they had
The play was written by Frederick Knott, and of course the film was based on that.
Yeah. That's great. So how long have you been directing?
I've been directing a number of years, but I started doing that after I realized that my main mental therapy, which is acting and being on stage, got to the point where I could no longer be cast in some of the shows that I would like to do, so I figured I might as well start directing some of the shows that I would like to do.
You think of it as mental therapy?
Yes, it is definitely my mental therapy.
Why
it
is
has
that?
been for years and years. My lifestyle for the last 3 or 4 years, primarily, has been very hectic with lots of other commitments in my life.
So you don't have time for acting anymore?
I still take the time.
Still
Again,
take
it
the
has
time.
been my mental therapy. I haven't done as many shows these last couple of years as I have in the past, but
Okay.
in past years I've done as many as 8 or 10 shows a year, which is quite a few, with the rehearsal schedule 4 to 6 weeks. This year I've done 2 shows. So.
What kind of roles were they?
One of my favorite roles was the character in a play called Sleuth. Sleuth is a 2-person show. In the film version, the 2 characters were played by Sir Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine, and I played the Olivier part. It's just, I did the show at Dundalk Community Theater, which is about a 400-seat space, which is almost always sold out from their subscriber base. And when you're on stage by yourself and doing a monologue, and you've actually got the audience in your hands, and you know that they're with you, you can literally feel the bands of energy coming off of people and just feed off of it. It's a rush.
It's like the exact opposite of television.
Exact opposite of television and film. I've done some film, and while it pays better, it's not nearly as much fun.
Yeah, that's
no
true.
immediate feedback.
Yeah, you don't feel the energy of the audience
correct.
as much as you do here. Unless, of course, there's people behind the cameras waving and yelling at you, which never happens here, but, you know.
What about I saying a little bit earlier? Weren't they yelling and screaming? Oh, never mind.
Oh, that was something else. Oh, I was excited. I've seen a few plays. I've never actually had the enjoyment of working in a huge audience, but what about stage fright? Does that ever
Stage fright.
come up?
Actually, I think every actor has stage fright just before they go on.
Really?
And
Even
everybody
Laurence
has their own.
Olivier?
Everybody has their own technique of dealing with it. For the most part, they have breath exercises and sometimes physical exercises and different things that you do just to get yourself prepared mentally and physically for the most part. Because every character you create also has some physical traits that you try and bring into it to make it different than yourself, to make the audience believe that you are in fact that character that you're portraying. You always, at least I always get over the nervousness after I first open my mouth.
Yeah, I think
Once
after
you
I
begin
make my
talking.
first few mistakes, then I'm like, oh, it wasn't so bad. You know.
I always thought to myself, if you need to ask yourself the question, what's the worst thing that could happen? And if the answer isn't you could die, it's not the worst thing
Yeah,
that
it's
could
not.
happen.
It's not too bad after all. Just embarrassing. That's all.
And there are some funny things that happen in most shows. I mean, and you never remember a show where everything goes exactly the way it was scripted and
I don't
directed.
think any shows do. Well, they're not very entertaining if they do, anyway.
The audience never knows.
They don't. Well, hopefully they won't know if you don't completely blank.
Speaking of stage fright, Alfred Hitchcock actually directed and produced a movie called Stage Fright.
Well, that's Alfred Hitchcock there, huh?
Alfred Hitchcock always had a unique style.
You like him a lot?
I like one of the things that he always used to do, and I'm going to bring that back in the production that I'm directing at Cockpit, the Dial M for Murder show. He had a convention where he appeared, did a cameo in each of his films, and it became a game to try and guess and watch for Hitchcock in each of his films.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to try that in this production.
I was told he could do
See
it.
if somebody sees me and notices that's me.
You're going to try and do this?
I'm going to try and do that.
Well, I'm sure the only. Well, that's a good idea, I guess. But who's going to be directing while you're doing it? I always wonder how they do that. But he was able to do it.
In film, they do it as a cutaway.
Oh, okay.
On stage, I'll do it as a blackout.
Okay. I think they did it with. He can do it on one take. I was told Alfred Hitchcock's really good at just walking in, doing it, leaving, and that's it. Not like us at all.
I think it's a little bit easier when you do it when you don't have any lines to say.
Oh yeah, that's probably why he was so good at just being quiet, walking through.
I think there are over 150 different theater groups between Baltimore, Washington, and Northern Virginia. And at one time in my life, I had the goal of trying to do one show with every group. I've probably done works with 60, 70 different groups at this point, but the ones that I always enjoy are the ones like Sleuth at Dundalk Community Theater. Done some things at the British Embassy. I once did Dracula.
Wow.
That was fun.
That must have been fun. That's always a fun production.
It was fun because the opening of the last act has the Von Helsing character, which is the character that I played at that time, kneeling over the vampire woman, staking them, and blood gushing up and squirting everywhere. And the girl that was playing the dead vampire girl at the time had it as her goal every night. She had the blood bag under her arm, and as I'm staking her in her chest on a wooden block so it wouldn't hurt her naturally, she'd squeeze her arm so the blood would shoot up, and she always wanted to get me right in the eye. And she did a couple of times.
That sounds, that sounds very gory.
I remember doing that show, and there are some characters where the director simply directs you to talk as fast as you can.
Really?
Pacing is probably one of the most important things in a stage show, much more so than on film, because on film you can cut and paste and go back and forth and do the things you need to do. But on a stage show, if it's not paced correctly, the audience loses interest, number one.
Especially the ones in the back. I
That's
mean, if it's a
correct.
big room, they might not hear you everything. But some play directors would tell you to speak fast.
It depends on the character and the part, yes. In this particular part and character, a lot of it was hectic action. And in order to keep the action going, you also had to keep the dialogue going at the same pace.
Like Gilbert and Sullivan's, I can imagine. They might want you to talk
Pirates
really
of
fast.
Penzance.
Yes,
those
exactly.
types of
Yeah,
things, yes. There's a show that everybody does in theater. Everybody does Neil Simon.
Neil Simon?
Everybody does Neil Simon in a lot of the community theaters. And I've done Rumors, Neil Simon's Rumors, a number of times. The last time I did it was at Silver Spring Stage out in PG County. And I played Lenny, the lead character, and Lenny has a 5-page monologue. And it's fun to do a long monologue, and just a challenge of trying to remember the words.
Yeah, that's
and then bringing
fun,
the rest of the cast in it, even though they don't have anything to say, but keeping them involved so that you keep the audience attached. I think, I'd like to talk a little bit more about Dial M for Murder and the production that I'm directing out at Cockpit this year. I'm truly amazed every time I go out there at the level of talent that they draw. There's a tremendous amount of musical talent in the Baltimore area that really doesn't have many places to work. So the ability to draw good talent dictates how well you sell the shows for the most part. And Cockpit has done very well over the years. My show, I've cast Mike Ware, Cynthia Scott, Ted Burke as the 3 lead roles who play the parts that were played in the film by Ray Milland, Grace Kelly, and Robert Cummings. The story of Dial M, very simply, is a tennis player, since retired because he's a little bit older, had married a fairly well-to-do socialite, played by Grace Kelly in the film, and decides that he'd rather have the money than let her keep him, and plans a murder. It's the story of how trying to plan the perfect murder. Unfortunately, the best laid plans, as usual, don't always go quite as well as expected. And the murderer that he hires, in my production, played by Jonathan Palevsky, Jonathan gets killed in the beginning of the second act, in a very, very dramatic scene. There'll be thunder and lightning, and he'll get stabbed in the back by the leading lady, who was played by Grace Kelly, Cynthia Scott in ours. And I specifically cast it. Jonathan is about my height. Cynthia's quite a bit taller. So it's a very, it's a unique shot, a picture framed of him being killed on top of a desk and rolling off onto the scissors. And then the fun part is Jonathan has to lay there for the rest of the act.
Well, was he able to like reach the phone and dial M? I thought they
I don't
dialed
think so.
They didn't have
I don't think
911
so.
back then.
Actually, he doesn't have to, because at the time that he's murdered, the phone is off the hook, because the husband, as an alibi, is calling home to actually hear
I
the
see.
murder, but he doesn't realize that all of this is going to go wrong and a murderer is going to get killed instead of the wife.
So
But
that's
in
why
the
they
story
call it
works out.
dial M?
That's correct.
Okay.
In the story, it works out because the wife is arrested for the murder and sent off to prison.
Well, they
so
have to
he
be.
still almost gets the money.
Hmm.
Of course, there's a third act where that changes.
Oh, okay. Is there a surprise ending here?
Of course, there's
Or
always a
twist?
surprise ending in Hitchcock.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, folks, if you'd like to come up and see the view here at the Top of the World, home of Top of the Morning, please dial 410-837-VIEW.